Welcome to our explainer. Today we're jumping into something pretty amazing, an ancient countdown. We're going to take a complex prophecy and lay it out as a clear, engaging timeline.
So, here's the big question we're tackling. We're diving into this really mind-blowing interpretation of a prophecy that's, get this, 2,500 years old. It's from the book of Daniel, and a lot of researchers argue it's one of the most important and freakishly precise prophecies you'll find anywhere.
So where does this all come from? Well, it's rooted in Daniel chapter 9. The story goes that the prophet Daniel gets a message directly from the angel Gabriel. And this wasn't just any message, it was a detailed timeline, a roadmap for the future of his people and, specifically, the city of Jerusalem.
Now, the core of this message is built around a period of 70 weeks. But, and this is a huge but, the sources we're looking at are very clear. We're not talking about your typical 7-day weeks here. Nope. These are symbolic weeks, and they stand for a much, much longer period of time. All right, so let's get into the weeds a bit. We've got to break down the language here to really get how this prophetic clock is supposed to tick.
Okay, the key word you need to know is Shabua. It's Hebrew, and while, it can mean a regular week, in this kind of prophecy, it's interpreted to mean a block of 7 years. This whole idea is actually tied to the ancient Hebrew practice of sabbatical years, so it's a concept they would have understood. So the prophecy gets super specific. It says a period of 69 of these weeks will pass between two major events, a specific command being given, and then the arrival of a prophesied ruler. It's this level of detail, this math, that makes this whole interpretation so fascinating to people.
Which, leads us to the next logical question, right? What exactly starts the clock? What's the starting gun for this 483-year countdown? Well, the text is pretty clear on that. It's a commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem.
And this is where some real historical detective work comes in. If you look back, there were actually a few different decrees about the Jewish exiles, but the sources we're looking at point out something crucial. The first 3 were only about rebuilding the temple. It's only that last one, the one from Artaxerxes, that gives the green light to rebuild the city of Jerusalem, walls and all.
And that's the one. That's the decree that this interpretation pinpoints as the official start. In fact, a lot of this analysis goes back to the work of a guy named Sir Robert Anderson, who figured this out way back in 1894. He dated this exact command to March 14th, 445 BC. And, boom, the prophetic clock starts ticking.
Okay, so we've got our start date. But here's where it gets even more interesting. To really see the precision this prophecy claims to have, we need to switch from years to an exact number of days. All right, let's do the math. We start with the 69 weeks from the prophecy.
Then we multiply that by 7 years for each of those weeks.
And that lands us at a total of 483 years. Simple enough, right? But wait, there's another really important step. The analysis uses what's called a prophetic year, which has 360 days. Now you might be thinking, wait, a year has 365 days? But the source material argues that this 360-day calendar was actually pretty common in the ancient world, and they point to other places in the Bible, like Genesis and Revelation, where it seems to be used. So, when you crunch the numbers, 483 years times 360 days a year, you land on this super specific number, 173,880 days. Exactly.
Okay, so let's put it all together. The clock starts on March 14th, 455 BC. If you count forward exactly 173,880 days from that point, where do you end up in history? What's the destination?
Well, according to the calculations from the source material, and this includes accounting for leap years and all that tricky calendar stuff, the timeline lands on one single solitary day, April 6th, 32 AD. And what's so special about that day? That is the date identified as the Triumphal Entry. The day Jesus rode into Jerusalem and was publicly declared a king for the very first time, which also happens to fulfill another old prophecy from the book of Zechariah.
And the sources really lean into this. They argue this wasn't just some random symbolic thing. They point to the moment when Jesus weeps over Jerusalem and literally holds the city's leaders responsible for not getting it, for not recognizing that exact day. He says they missed the time of their visitation. The implication is they should have done the math. They had the schedule.
But hold on a second. This brings up a really big question, doesn't it? The prophecy was for 70 weeks. The whole countdown we just did was only for 69. So, what about that last week? Where's the 70th week?
This is where the interpretation gets really interesting. It suggests that the prophetic clock basically got paused.
It stopped right after the 69th week. There are a bunch of events that happen after the 69th week but before the 70th is supposed to start, like the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. So it's like there's a gap, a pause in the timeline.
So, if you look at it this way, almost all of this prophecy, 98% of it, is considered finished. It's history. It's in the books. But that final 7-year chunk, that 70th week, is still out there. It's been postponed, and it's seen as something that's still to come in the future.
And that really leaves us with something to chew on, doesn't it? If this analysis is right, and the first 69 weeks of this ancient countdown really did happen with that kind of incredible day-specific precision, well, that completely changes how you look at that final leftover week. It's not just a piece of ancient history anymore. It becomes something to watch for in the future.